Welcome back for another week of Centenarian Club. Today we're going to be talking about stress and we're going to be having a discussion on shifting some more awareness into stress as it approaches and what it means in your body, and then shifting into a state of empowerment so that we can catch it before it turns into burnout in a lot of cases. So before we get into that, we want to hear from you guys. If there are any wins in the house, we'd love to hear them and celebrate with you. Anybody do any spring cleaning from last week?
We've got some planned spring cleaning coming up on tomorrow. So we have our tenants and our other property moving out today. So tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday are a grinding spring cleaning. So painting every wall and then cleaning every carpet, just doing the full revamp. So can't wait.
Whoa, that's going to be a massive spring clean. And then are you getting a new tenant or selling?
New tenant. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, nice. That'll be a big weekend. Good luck. Would offer to help. We have our own stuff going on here.
Yeah, I get it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, that Goodbye Things book has been helpful.
I think, yeah, Gwen and Thomas are back together. So their microphone was reverberating into each other. But
One's left me, so I gotta turn my volume up.
okay.
The Goodbye, he left. That Goodbye Things book has been really good. Andrew, I'm almost finished it, so give you a whole new perspective.
Oh,
Especially
awesome.
after collecting things from your parents, both parents, collecting things from both parents, your kids. And now we gotta you guys are just worried about what's happening now when you're just getting started. Try collecting things for 60 years.
Yeah.
Lots of things that add up, quickly. And you get blinders so you don't even see it anymore.
Well, yeah, because the kids want to hold on to stuff, or Nathaniel, he does all these he goes to all these places where they're setting up shows and everything and brings things back. And can you hold this? Can you keep this? Can you so I mean, we've got the space, so that's not the issue. It's just that when it comes time to downsize, and you're gonna have to make some tough decisions, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It is a different perspective. Yeah, it's just not like a common thing. I feel like the minimalism movement is like very much a recent thing. Like it's not like it's recently become more trendy, but it wasn't something that anyone ever talked about. Probably because for the last however many hundreds of years, we've had like this more of like a scarcity mindset because you had to store food for the winter. It was very helpful to have like an excess of things, but now we're in a weird place where most of us have more than we really need, and we have a surplus of things, and we don't really have to worry about going hungry, which is great. But then you have this new problem of just accumulating way too many things, and they can kind of run your life sometimes. So it's all about finding that balance. Yes, and Veronique mentioned last week how with kids it's like a whole different ball game because then what do you tell them, and they accumulate so many things and tricky one. So we're working on it, work in progress.
Did anybody else start reading Goodbye Things yet? We gotta have our book club.
I can't. I'm not ready. But I see how it's so true. Like I have that reflection to myself that, oh my gosh, I have more stuff to maintain and just sort and put and find a place where it belongs, and otherwise it just accumulates. It's just like weeds in the garden. Like if there's an empty space in the garden, it just grows like whatever it wanna grows. But it's the same in the house. It's just, and I just felt too, it's like that you said it's society, like we're giving so much stuff, like, oh, you have kids, take this, and it's like it's almost like you can't say no, and it's like I maybe need 10% of this, but now the kids sees that it's too late, like we don't really need this. It's
Right.
so anyway, I don't know. And it changes too as they grow. Like when in Stephanie it's older. Mine is like now it's at the age where they see things coming in the house. I can just take them away and they don't notice anymore. Like it used to be just like da 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 disappeared, magic. But now they know it's not like a fairy or it's like really mommy that takes those things away and but
Just
it's
mean
teaching them
mommy.
too. But anyway, it's a constant it's not it's not easy.
Right.
It's finding that balance plus it's and I find too that it's maybe if you have a land like you want to keep equipment, you use it maybe once a year because it's a seasonal thing. You need to
Mhm.
keep it. So it feels like there's a lot of seasonal things that I'm keeping too that I don't use that much, but when it's time, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that with my mom's mindset when there's things that she can use even just for one time, she's like so pumped up that she saved it. You know, it's like very validating that you have it in the house and that you didn't get rid of it. But then you also think like, I don't know, like for gardening and stuff, like maybe it's not feasible. But then you also think about, actually maybe, because you have a community of gardeners around there. You also think about sharing things, right? Like does every single person need to have that same equipment? Because you all need it in the same, time frame, right? So then you can kind of share that piece of equipment. My mom's was saying, Blazer said Easter pillows. Yeah, my mom has bins and bins of seasonal decor. That's just her thing. She'll never get rid of it. But like, for instance, I was recently pulling her suitcase out, and she has like 4 suitcases, one of every size, massive down to like the carry-on, whatever. And I was like, when do you ever use this massive one? Like, we should get rid of it for you. Oh no, I've never used it. But what if one day she needs to move something from here to there, And I'm like, well, mom, I just moved and I didn't even use it. Like it's one of those things that you just almost have to remind yourself because you can make an excuse, but then you have to remind yourself, like, if I truly need it at that time, it will show up. I can either buy it or borrow it from a friend, right? Or share it with somebody if it's a seasonal thing or whatever. I don't know. You almost have to force yourself to catch those hoarder mentalities where you're like, but what?
I know. Yeah, that's that balance.
Yeah.
That- yeah.
Yeah.
And do I want to put time thinking about that or just and again it's gonna be a choice of time where I put my time and my priority and do I spend time cleaning or how long and is it worthwhile or spend more time on relationship building with my kids and or
Yeah.
cooking because I have so much food that I need to do something with it or I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all in seasons of life. Like you said, it's not right for you right now, and you just gotta honor
No,
that.
it's not. But I
Yeah.
know it's gonna come. Like downsizing will come eventually, but it's not my season.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Well, I think one of the best things too is just not letting things come in the first place, right? Because like cleaning is a whole different ball game. It's very overwhelming. It's a lot of work, but just to have that awareness when someone does say, "Hey, do you want this?" And it's so easy to say, "Oh, free, yeah, I want this," but then it just sits somewhere and you don't use it for whatever multiple years, right? So just having that awareness up front and being very selective with what
Yeah.
comes in, so you don't,
Yeah, if you can do it, congrats. I didn't have that mindset before, so it was it's kind of now too late.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, if you are ever ready, the book has some helpful strategies about how to, how to go through those things. I know there's one section on yeah, just different strategies. So some things you obviously know, like, okay, this is junk, I'm gonna get rid of it. But other things you have more of a sentimental value. So how do you deal with that? Like for him, what he would do with a lot of things is he would take a picture, even if it was something silly. He had like a letter from his mom that had like when he was a kid, and I think it had like directions of like how to get to school or something, and he like couldn't let go of it. But then he realized, okay, if he just took a picture of it and he put it on a hard drive, that made him feel better about it. So he's able to let it go. Or another strategy is to like, if you're not sure, just put it in a bin somewhere in the basement and have like a time date. Like, hey, I'm gonna check this on 1 year. If I haven't used it in 1 year, then I can get rid of it. And I feel like that's a good way to hold on to it. But then you realize like, oh yeah, I haven't used it an entire year. Okay, I probably don't need it. So there's different things like that where you don't have to just
Yeah,
instantly become a pure minimalist, right?
yeah, yeah. I'll probably read it one day when
Awesome.
I feel it's like time.
Yeah. What's that, please?
I was gonna say recently I've been loving throwing shit out. I know that sounds like I've just been really, really loving it. Like I made a goal over the last 2 weeks to throw a shirt every single day. because I
Yeah.
have all these random cotton shirts from like 12 years ago. Chell, I know you have a bunch of them as well.
I got rid of a lot.
Yeah, like in my opinion, if I could wear the same thing every single day, I think I would. Obviously, it's different with climate, but yeah, in my opinion, I've really been loving throwing stuff out, especially some of the big stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Just like decluttering and getting rid of as much as possible, basically all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you need to take advantage of those moods because sometimes you're not in that mindset. But when you have that like spring cleaning energy, then just take advantage and just get rid of stuff while you can.
Totally.
Same with Tanya. She's been taking a truck to the dump. That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Let's get started on our chat of the day. So here's the document here. I'm just going to share the screen so that you can choose to open the document or not, but then those watching the replay, you can easily follow along. Okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to be talking about stress. So I like this quote: "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another." And as we go into this, sometimes it can feel like you're a victim of stress, or stressful things happen to you. And that's true. Things are happening, but it is how we choose our thoughts and how we perceive it, how we internalize the stress. That's really what causes the negative health outcomes in the long run. So let's get into. Let me just change this here. Okay, so let's get into the definition of stress here. It's the body's response to any demand or perceived threat. Okay, so remember, it's the response. So it's not necessarily the thing that happens, it's how your body perceives it. So physical, emotional, or psychological. It's not always considered bad, but it becomes a problem when it's chronic or unmanaged. So in nature, we generally have sources of stress, things that like back in the day when it was hunter-gatherer season of life, that you would basically be hunting something. You'd see something in the distance, a gazelle, let's say. Do you ever catch a gazelle too fast?
By hand?
No, like to hunt it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. For
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So you're hunting a gazelle, right? So then all of a sudden your fight or flight response comes up because you have to then chase that gazelle and pursue it and however you're going to hunt it. That stress, and then after you hunt the gazelle, it's over, right? Your stress response goes down. When it's chronic and unmanaged, right? Like when we look at our today's society, everything is hunting a gazelle. Like emails become stress, traffic is stress, day to day, what am I going to eat for lunch? Sometimes that becomes a stress. Or things in our environment, like we were just talking, that becomes a stress. It becomes chronic, right? So we're chronically activating this nervous system, which can then become a problem. Stress is pressure plus perception that you can't handle it. Stressful things have happened. Can you think of a time where something stressful happened, but you don't actually internalize it as much? Or maybe the same thing happens to you and somebody else, and one person is 10 out of 10 stress and you're just kind of lingering at like a 2. It's that perception piece, right? That's where it becomes stress.
Yeah. It's super individual. And it's interesting because sometimes you see within families, obviously people grow up with the same circumstances, but then for whatever reason, like one child just, it seems to be a very stressful thing for them. That event really affected them. Whereas for the other kids, it was, just however they perceived it was not an issue for them. Or even just like, if you think about like adrenaline junkies, for a lot of people, I'm definitely not an adrenaline junkie, but I also don't think I would have a terrible response. But I'm sure you can think of people who, like, if they went bungee jumping or skydiving, it could be like literally like the scariest thing that they've ever done. And it could feel like they're dying and it could lead to panic attacks, whatever. Whereas someone else, exact same experience, that could be like the highlight of their life. They could be like flying on those, adrenaline hormones and all that kind of stuff. So it really is individual. It's just how your body's perceiving it. And I think what we'll get into is how you're able to change your perception. Obviously takes some work, but you want to get to that point where you're able to change your perception so that it doesn't have a negative impact on you. And we're all going to have acute stressors, but like Marissa was saying, as long as we don't let it turn into a chronic stress, then we're in good shape. And you see that animals are really good at this. So we always look at River, our dog. Sometimes she's like shaking. She's so scared, whatever happens. But then what does she do? She reliably just does a shake, shake, shake. And then she's just like, next thing you know, she's prancing like nothing ever happened. And you see that with gazelles too. So if they evaded the hunt of the lion or whatever, you see like all those animals, they're able to just kind of like move. They do some sort of like somatic thing to get rid of that trauma. And then they're just like back at it. They forgot about it. So they've had that spike of adrenaline and cortisol and all that stuff. And then they should be coming back down into that normalized state. But in our world, we get really stuck in that chronic stress state. And that's where you run into a lot of issues.
So that's like the resiliency of your nervous system, that swing. We want that to be able to happen. We want actually to be able to get stressed and then to recover. That recovery is what's super important. So stress isn't just what happens to you, it's how your mind and your body interprets what happened. I know I'm just really hammering this down with these quotes and stuff, but it is, I thought that this can be something maybe a little bit liberating when it comes to stress, because we can really take power back, right? Sometimes you could feel a bit like a victim to it. Oh, I have to do all these things. And, you know, the emails keep piling up, the dishes in the sink, there's laundry overflowing, there's water in my basement, right? It's like, I'm just such a victim. But it isn't. It's how you're perceiving it, how you're interpreting it. Okay, I'll move on now. Okay, so there's types of stress. Acute is something that happens short term in the moment, something like a deadline or a traffic jam. It's in your face. Okay. Chronic stress is something that's more ongoing, right? So you're looking at financial strain, relationship tension, or burnout, maybe something from work, or just ill-managed stress for a long time becomes a stress on your body. And then there's something called eustress, good stress. We've talked about this before, but it's positive stress that can actually motivate us. So like preparing for a presentation or a competition, pushing yourself during a workout, cold plunging, new experiences that excite and scare you at the same time. These can be good sources of stress, but again, you want to look at that recovery afterwards as well. Okay, so we're going to get into the stress response: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Have you guys has everyone heard of all four of these? I think the fight or flight is pretty, like, a lot of people have heard of this. Some people have also heard of freeze. Have you also heard of fawn? That last one. No, it's new. Not so much fawn. Yeah, I like this one. I liked learning about this one. Yeah, fawn. We'll go into it so that we can learn about it. But basically, the stress response is a built-in survival mechanism, and it's governed by the nervous system. And it triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline through our body. Okay, and it allows us to react quickly. So we're going to get into these different types. So fight is reacting to stress with, you know, an outburst, anger. Something happens and your whole body goes into that fight mode. You might feel like your face get red. Let's say a traffic jam, all of a sudden you're swearing at that other person and you're swerving around them or hitting the brakes or trying to get around somebody. You're trying to fight that. Okay. And then there's flight, and you try and escape or avoid the situation. So something stressful has happened and you're trying to escape it, trying to get away from it. So flight can be actually something becoming a workaholic, right? So if something stressful is happening, you're being a workaholic to kind of run away from something, maybe at home, right? Overthinker, anxiety or panic attack. It's that flight response. Okay. Freeze is when you actually shut down. Emotionally, you might feel stuck or numb, unable to act, right? So we have like the analysis paralysis that could come in when we're overwhelmed, or just an overall numbness. You know that you should be feeling something, but you don't. Then emotional numbness can come in. Okay, fawn is the new one. Fawn, I find this so interesting as a stress response, because I'm sure we all know somebody who has this, or we ourselves do it, is you try and please others or to stay safe, even at your own expense. So like people pleasing. No boundaries. Somebody asks something of you and you don't want to do it, but you say yes anyways, just to appease them. It can make you very codependent in relationship and make you feel overwhelmed. Where did I get it? Oh, maybe I cut it out. But when I posted it in here, there was like the Instagram that I got it from. I'll try and find it again. I thought it was in there. I only get into the fight when it comes to anything against my kids. Yeah, so we might have different nervous system responses depending on the person, right? There's some people that you might feel more comfortable getting into that fight response. And then in some cases, you might be more of a fawner, right? That's your stress response is actually fawning, overly smiling. I'm so guilty of that. When I'm uncomfortable, I overly smile
Giggle.
and giggle inappropriately. So yeah. Also that they call this a trauma response. Yeah. So these are learned responses. This can be something that you can learn over time to respond in that way because it makes you safe. It's worked in the past based on family dynamics over time. And then you carry that forward into the future. So when that stress comes up, your nervous system knows exactly how to respond. You've learned this, likely through like a trauma response.
So do you know if there'd be like a positive way to respond to stress? Like when your sympathetic nervous system's activated, like what would be like the appropriate way? Or is it just like going to be like one of these?
That's a good question. Yeah. I feel like, well, first we can pull that into what you guys think. What would be an appropriate way? And you can kind of look into let's just say, Tanya, you mentioned with your kids, that fight response. What could be the way that you can show up almost with that fight energy, but not so much as like an outburst, right? You can look into your tendency and find a healthy way to proceed.
I think also maybe just with experience or also just I guess with life experiences, because the situation actually happened on the weekend where my kids were coming into the car and there was a car parked beside us and she saw the kids coming in, but she started moving and Michael was like, he's so small and he was right there at the back and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was ready to get out of the car and like just freak out, right?
Yeah.
But then I was like, I don't want to behave that way. I don't want to behave that way in public. Like, okay, let's hold back. I kind of just like waved my hands and then they got in the car and I was like, okay, take a step back, and take a breather and like, hey, they're okay. Everything's fine, And then it was in the parking lot of where they do jujitsu. So then I just sent an email right away to, the coaches to say like, maybe we can send out a safety email and, get that addressed. Right. So just take a step back. But my fight was ready, was ready to come out there and just confront this mom and just like freak out.
Yeah, like total mama bear vibes. I think that's appropriate and fine. Like that, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you don't experience anger when you're stressed, especially when it comes to your kids. If that's your first response, I think that's appropriate and fine. It does come into the recovery piece and how you do it, right? If you're so angry that you get a bat and you go through her windows, inappropriate, right? But your initial experience of anger and feeling like, okay, well, I don't want to cause a fight here. Maybe not necessarily the scene because, that's look like at perception, but in terms of you and how you want to present in the world, you don't want to cause a fight here, but you are going to, act on this. I think that's totally appropriate. We don't need to avoid these like seemingly negative responses like anger. It is looking at like, the recovery afterwards too.
I so agree. It's like it's the energy behind, it's informing you that there's something wrong. So if the anger is so strong, it's like there's something really wrong here, like that the other person needs to be informed of, and it needs to be informed maybe not in a violent way, but it could be in a way where, whoa, do you realize what you're doing? Like it can be firm in a firm way, but it's that balance of being in the spot, recognizing that the emotion is there and it's strong, so I need to do something. So you took action. It's perfect. Like you find, like you say, whoa, I don't want to let it out and be out of control. But you did action right after, which is great. Like a calling or sending an email. Like we need to do something here.
Yeah, some things did, go through my head. That's why I kind of like, I think 20-year-old me would have acted very differently. So I think it was good, but it was funny because I almost like scared myself in a way. I was like, whoa, I was really going to react pretty bad at that point. And I think it's because I'm also very sensitive when it comes to Michael, because a lot of things have happened to him. So I'm always like really on guard. So it really caught me. So, but I didn't. So I was proud of myself.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Like you have to remember too, like these are trauma responses, it says here, but they're also survival instincts. So we can't suppress that, right? Like I don't really like always going back to like the hunter gatherer because it's not as relatable. But if you're presented with like a bear, you know, that doesn't happen anymore. But if we're presented with a bear, you're gonna fight it, you're gonna run. Freezing would be like playing dead, or fawning would be like appeasing the bear in some way, maybe like offering it food and redirecting it. Right. So those are all appropriate responses. So then when we bring it back into our situations, we can talk about situations like this and just see like, is this still appropriate? I think the answer is for that situation, Tanya, yes. And then too, you sit with like how much you ruminated about it afterwards. I think that'll tell you a lot about how you responded and if it felt appropriate to you. Because if you fawn when you actually felt like fighting, how bad does that feel afterwards, right? It sits with you, you're like, I can't believe I didn't say something, right? So we have to notice when our initial reaction is maybe people pleasing and smiling or whatever. Oh my gosh, this happened. Somebody tried to kick River. He was like, River got in her space and he tried to kick her. And my initial reaction was fawn. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, you know, grab her. I'm so sorry. I'm the one that's apologizing, right? And afterwards I sat with it and I was so mad that I didn't, at myself mostly, that I didn't say something about how inappropriate it was that he tried to kick her, right? So I didn't stay in my truth. So it's interesting too to see your initial responses to stress and see if that is your truth or if it's learned. Because that could be a way to find your healthy balance too on how you want to express yourself. No problem. See you, Blaze. He says, speaking of stress, I got to go back to work. Okay. We can sit into these based on Andrew's questions. Like, so that's we just talked about fight. What about flight? What would be an appropriate flight response? I wonder. Anybody have a situation that they feel like these are good reflections here to flight, but it doesn't have to be in this little diagram. It could be something else.
Yeah, I think that like anxiety and panic and stuff is also can be very normal, especially if it is like a life or death situation. It would be weird if you weren't like, you know, panicking if you did come face to face with the bear or like feel some anxiety. Like I think that would be totally normal. It's just when that becomes a chronic thing that it's an issue, right? Yeah, I feel like probably like OCD and perfectionists, that's seems like more of a chronic thing that could be negative, whereas just having that like initial flight experience is like totally normal.
Mhm.
And even like overthinking to some degree, right? I think it'd be normal to have in any type of stressful situation. Sometimes you have a lot of like thoughts going on once, a racing mind.
I think too, like if you have a interpersonal relationship fight with somebody, maybe your partner or a friend, sometimes for me at least, there's a flight reaction where I want to avoid for a while. And I need that time. The flight is actually protection for me, that I need that time to think and to process before going into that conversation that has to follow. Yeah, I think flight and freeze will both give you time they're almost stalling to give you time to react in a way that feels good. And again, both those can be healthy as well. And fawn could be a positive thing too, if you're feeling like truly unsafe and you just need to say the right thing to get out of there, right? Or in some cases, it's just not even worth your time or energy to, you know, get into the fight. I don't know, there's certain situations, of course, but yeah. It's not the load that breaks you down. It's the way you carry it. So we're not victims. Even though sometimes we can get caught in that, we're not victims. We need to catch ourselves when you're feeling that woe is me, and it's okay, woe is you, but you catch yourself and really see, like, am I choosing to stay in this? You ever catch yourself when you're choosing to stay mad or you're choosing to stay stressed? There are things that you can do to get out of it, but you're almost like actively choosing to stay there. See if you can catch those responses so that then we can move through and past.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just that like awareness that you are doing that, and then it usually just kind of fizzles away. It's not like you have to force yourself to not be in one of those states anymore, but you can just say like, I've heard some people use this technique. They say like, oh, look at victim Andrew over there being all upset about this like nominal thing that's not actually important. And then once you identify that, I'm not trying to change my state, but I'm just saying like it's interesting, like observing myself acting like this, and then you realize how silly it often is, and then you just kind of change, and that's kind of like what a lot of the meditations and like Buddhism and that kind of stuff talks about. They're not really telling you to like change your mindset. It's just become aware, become the observer, like just an objective observer of what's going on. And it's tough to happen when you're like in the middle of like, say, like this angry outburst or explosive behavior in the fight, right? But afterwards, just to think about it objectively, and then you tend to find that equilibrium afterwards. Do you guys have a predominant F?
Just before we go in that discussion for the predominant F, I was given a trick when I went to Sedona to do the Alpha Wave neurofeedback training for getting that distance between your thoughts and your emotions, and like being in that observer seat. And it was that to say, instead of like when you talk to yourself, instead of saying, I feel this, I'm like that, you're starting, you're using the I, right? You associate like your thoughts or like that. So you make the effort to kind of, you have a sentence, you change it. Veronique is feeling this. Veronique is seeing this. Veronique wants to do this, but you put it to the third person, and it automatically creates some distance between, because you don't see it in the eye. Like you don't change anything of what you'd like to do or what you feel like, and even like sometimes I do it with the kids. I realize, I say, mom wants, like, it's not like mom is mad, all right? Like, but just because I say mom is instead of I am mad, it's like there's a little shift there that happens, a little distance. And I would love to have seen that they said that they were study about that they've studied people, and that was one of the signs for wisdom, that when you can refer to yourself as the third person when you're in that moment or afterwards, it increased wisdom. And I was like, I wanted to have the result, like, where did you get the studies? And I couldn't, because sometimes they forgot, or I forgot about it after, but I would have liked to get the result, like the actual studies that they were referring in that course. Something to look
That's
at,
cool.
another option.
I love that, because I think sometimes we can overly identify with our emotions. I see this too with like, I am anxious, I have anxiety, right? I like, it's like you identify with it, like then it becomes you. And there's a type of therapy that is called parts therapy, what's it called? Family systems, internal family systems. And it talks about all the different parts of you that make up you, right? So saying mom is angry, right? It's like not so identifiable as like, your essence, but it's like who you are, this version of yourself in this moment is angry, right? And that's okay. That's appropriate. So I love that too, because it helps you not identify with like, sometimes we can have like anger and then afterwards you feel like a horrible person for being so angry, right? But it's that part of you that was angry, that mama bear part, right? Or that just the part that wants the best for your kids.
Yeah, I think in the internal family systems too, I'm not an expert on it, but I think you identify the different parts of yourself. So say like there's angry Andrew and sad Andrew and maybe like alcoholic Andrew, not just as an example. But then you can look at all of those and realize their functions too. It's not like, because sometimes we think it's wrong to be angry Andrew, but then you say, well, actually, angry Andrew helped me through these situations. Or alcoholic Andrew, if I didn't have alcohol, then maybe I would have taken my own life or something, right? So you look at the benefits of all the different parts of you, and then that can help you to become more integrated, I guess. So it's just an interesting way of thinking about it.
And see if those parts are still needed, because they're there as a mechanism to protect you in some way. They were learned. And maybe as a young age, your environment wasn't safe and you had to, learn to be angry to protect yourself or whatever. And then you look at your environment today and you're like, well, I don't need that part of me to be so predominant anymore. I don't need that protector part of me anymore.
I feel I never heard the name of that therapy, but it reminds me of many things that I've come across. Like it makes sense with it's just that I've been, even with nonviolent communication, the different part of us that's are inside, like I have the the Vero kid inside of me still, the Vero baby, like in my brain is still like there's a little part of me that's still a baby, that's still a kid, and I have the adult one, and I have like, and I don't know, you kind of go through like the different and listen to their needs and feelings and trying to find the needs underneath to kind of say, understand where is it coming from, that I have that instinct reaction for fear in that situation, or so it kind of relates to some of those things. So that'd be interesting, like to kind of check out, like, is that like that therapy style? I've never heard about that name or that sort of therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a specific form of therapy. I think the guy's name is Arthur. Oh no,
Will-
something Schwartz, not Arthur. That's
William?
a volleyball player. No, Dick Schwartz, Richard Schwartz.
Richard, yeah.
Yeah, we can find some of his stuff. I just have heard him on a few podcasts. I haven't really taken like a deep dive, but it's just interesting to hear. And sometimes he like walks through situations with people on the podcast, and it's interesting just how he like breaks things down and can get to like the root of many issues quite quickly. So it's cool.
And some therapists are trained in this, so then you can pursue therapy and with that type of a practitioner too, if it feels aligned. All right. Okay, and then just how stress manifests. Sorry, Gwen, were you going to say something?
There we go. With the Tony Robbins thing that we did, he had it so that we were thinking about an issue, and then he had 4 personality parts, kind of your sovereign, your lover, your warrior, and your magician. I think were the 4. And it was like we all have these personalities kind of in us. And he talked about working with a boxer or fighter of some sort who had been amazing at winning all kinds of things, and then got himself into a funk where he just was so angry that he kind of was, he'd been known as being somebody who could anticipate and see a punch before it was coming and make his move and do all that stuff. So the way Tony Robbins kind of described it was, you had that magician in you, like you could see the things, right? And he goes, but you've let anger take over so much that anger is the only thing that's fighting, right? And so he kind of worked his way through, and he goes, and you've got love in there, right? And you got all that stuff. So after he kind of worked through it, and he goes, yeah, I feel much better now. He won the fight, but not only did he win the fight, he had the compassion to go and talk to his opponent afterwards, to give his mother a hug, right? To do all, and because all the parts of him were working together now instead of just focusing on the one, right? Which is kind of cool.
Wow,
That's
that
very
is
cool.
cool. It takes so much self-awareness to be able to do. Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So much to learn. I think the more self-awareness, which is what some exercises that I've written out here, the more we can have some self-awareness around the way stress shows up. Sometimes it does take a practitioner, working with a practitioner, like Gwen just said with Tony Robbins, an internal family systems practitioner, or just listening to the information and seeing. But you can get so much deeper because we have so many blind spots. We have years and years of operating in this way, so sometimes it's just really hard to see. Yeah, Veronique says she likes it when you relate it to Tony Robbins. So yeah, please do keep sharing his info. You guys have learned a ton, and we're learning through you. Okay, so how stress manifests. This is like just the things that we think of classically, muscle tension, headaches or migraines, fatigue. Stress can actually impact our gut greatly. So physically, it can impact us that way. Mental, it can be like anxiety, racing thoughts, trouble focusing, overwhelm, sometimes hard time going to sleep because of these racing thoughts. Emotionally, you can change from, your natural demeanor all of a sudden to being more anxious or irritable or sad or angry. And then behavioral, avoidance, overworking, snapping at others, addictive behaviors. So stress can manifest in all these ways. And these are kind of like classical ways. But then what we want to get into is your own response. How does stress show up for you through some discussion questions? So I have some listed out here. Let's just go through them one by one and just give you some time to really reflect in this. And you might not have the answer right now, and that's okay. But maybe what we can do is just talk about it, write some notes. And then as the week goes on, this is going to go into next week and maybe even the week afterwards. So as the week goes on, see if you can continue to write in here. We don't need this to be a huge list. And the other tricky part is that stress can show up differently with different, like as Tanya mentioned with her kids, she has a totally different stress response than maybe with household things or whatever, right? So it can show up differently and that's okay. But the goal here is really just to increase the self-awareness. Because sometimes it can show up very classically like this, and we can know it's stress, right? You're talking to someone, you're like, it's stress. But sometimes it's sneaky. Okay, so nothing else gets me angry. Mama bear to the T. Okay, so how do you know when you are stressed? How does stress show up in your body? And you can classify this in short term, long term, if you want. Just take a moment to think about this, write it down. You can make a copy of this document and fill it in. We'll just give you 3 minutes here just to think about it. Does anybody want to share? You don't have to. We can move on to the next one if nobody wants to.
I was just saying that my sleep always suffers. And I think this is common for a lot of people, but sometimes you don't realize you're stressed during the day and you haven't processed all that stress. And then once your head hits the pillow, I actually don't have issues falling asleep. A lot of people will they'll just kind of spiral and have all those thoughts. But for me, it'll more be waking up in the middle of the night, maybe, and then thinking about random things. So a lot of that is just unprocessed stress from the day that'll show up subconsciously when you're sleeping. So that's kind of a reliable one for me to keep an eye on.
For myself, I know when I'm stressed, when I have like intrusive thoughts, when I start feeling myself having like a lot of fear thoughts or a lot of like those, I know right away, I'm like, whoa, okay. We need to like calm down or switch things up. I'll do the shallow breathing. That happens a lot, which I use the breathing technique that we learned a long time ago with holding the nostril. That helps me so much. Like it really brings me back into place. And then another one that I have is if I'm binge eating, if I'm like numbing out, like freeze mode, and just like eating whatever's in front of me without any thought, then I know that my body's in some sort of stress.
Thanks for sharing that. And the alternate nostril breathing, that's what you do? Awesome. Jen Mansell taught us that a while ago. So if anybody needs a refresher, we can send that replay.
Yeah, that's I was just thinking about like the intrusive thoughts. Basically, like anytime you have some sort of thought based in fear, I would say you're almost automatically in some sort of stress state, right? Your body's going to be shifting into the sympathetic anytime that something is fear related, which is probably like quite common in a lot of us. So I think that's an interesting thing just to pay attention to too. If you're having worries or basically any action or thought related to fear, then you know you're out of balance.
Yeah, I get that too, Tana. All of a sudden my mind will be very all of a sudden it's very dark thoughts that the worst things are going to happen, you know, when we're out and I'm thinking about like a house, the tree is going to fall in the house, or, you know, like just things like very intrusive things that are just like not usually in my nature to think about, but I know I'm out of balance when that comes up.
Or river's going to get eaten by an eagle.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened recently. Not the invite eagle, the thought, and then carrying it over to Andrew to make sure he's safe with her. Veronique.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's like I feel it in my stomach, it gets tight. And I have like those, either I'm gonna go in the victim mode thoughts, like, why me? What is it at? And the why, I just realized now it's like the why is related with like victim. It's like it's imposed on me. Or I'm gonna go into another mode of thought would be like more like the achiever, the perfectionist, like where achieve like my goal to do X needs to be complete or done. Otherwise I'm screwed, and it goes above like relationship manners, or like when I have these instinct inside, I was like, okay, that's yeah. So it's be more stomach, and then now I realize like I can be slow stomach too, and I'm wondering to like slow evacuation constipation. I tend to do that if I go on vacation or like, and now I'm questioning, is that related with the stress of like traveling, or I don't know. I'd have to check more. So later, because my stomach is tight, so maybe that's related. I'd have to check in. A question for me.
Yeah. I mean, so many variables with that for sure. But yeah, stress, traveling is a big stress. It's like one of those stresses. Like it could be a good stress because it's exciting and not scary, but like you have to think about so much, so many variables when you're bringing the kids. There's all that to take care of as well. There's just
Or
so
leaving the house, making sure everything is fine. And I say travel, and it's just going back to see my family for a few days, right? It's not a big travel, but it is.
Yeah, but still, it can cause stress. So that's why it's so cool to know, you know, how you know when you're stressed, because sometimes the mind, we don't think that we're stressed. Sometimes we don't even have the awareness that we're stressed because you're just caught in the to-do list or whatever. You're just pushing through. But the body, it knows. It always knows. So that's why it's great to identify this list of things so that we can start to see, oh, I'm constipated. I must be really holding something here. So it's great to have this list just so you know, even when your mind doesn't quite know, because sometimes we can have those blinders onto it. All right. Oh, Thomas and Gwen, were you going to share?
We can do this, really, we can. Wait, push the button 5 times before it actually does it.
It's okay.
You can share.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'm on camera, but one of the things I've noticed, and this was kind of through our Anthony Robbins course and then working some afterwards, but my happy and stress are typically in the same place, and that's kind of in my chest area. So I can be really excited and pumped, and I feel like really energized in the chest area. But then when I'm really stressed, I can feel it in the same area too. So I thought that was really weird. And then I really gravitate to Tanya's like, and I never think about it, but when you're eating the wrong things and you know you shouldn't be, I never kind of think back that, oh, this has got to be a stress response to something. I should stop and think about, okay, what is it that caused me not to stop and go, okay, I can make better food choices here. So that's kind of from me.
Awesome.
I can totally relate to the stomach issues and stuff, because that's where it hits me, is I go, oh, the stomach just turns into knots. And then I find myself doing the pacing.
Mhm.
And then too, the head, it just leaps the thoughts of, okay, you just create your own story, it's your own scenario, and make it worse and worse and worse, or that you don't have the abilities or whatever, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. And again, going into like this, we can talk to like long-term, short-term. The things that a lot of us have mentioned are big symptom reactions when there's stress. And that's great to identify. And then as we go on to some of the next questions, we can start to identify too before these bigger things happen, maybe, right? Maybe there's something that we're missing that actually precipitates the tight stomach or the pacing or the intrusive thoughts, right? So what can we do to identify before that? So, but first step is just to know, like, how do we know, right? And see at what stage are we at when we start to identify, and can we start to identify it earlier? Because maybe there are little trickles of evidence beforehand that we're missing because we're so caught up in our stress. And sometimes we don't think that we're stressed because, let's just say travel, because it's such an exciting thing. This is good, I'm leading up to travel. This is good. I'm not stressed. So if we can identify, then we can start to realize. Or other things, just leading a day-to-day life, right? Like having the to-do list of your day-to-day to-dos. Nothing's like that big and stressful. Nothing big happened. No big bomb was dropped in your email inbox or, in your house or whatever. But it can still be stress because we're just overdoing it in some capacity.
Yeah, I think it's difficult too sometimes. This is why it's really important to figure out how it shows up in your body, but sometimes it's a cumulative stress of various things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. So like we're talking mostly about psychological stress, but also various like physical stressors. Your body doesn't really differentiate that much. So like say you're like overtraining, you're just doing too much exercise, maybe you're not sleeping enough, but then also you have some psychological stress going on. And then also there's the physical stress. You were just traveling, which, jet lag is a stress on your body. Flying, you're getting bombarded with EMFs and all sorts of things. So, you may only be thinking that like, oh, I've been a little bit stressed with work, but not realizing that you have all these other cumulative stressors. So then to be able to know like, oh, I'm getting these digestive issues, that must mean I'm stressed. Maybe you're not sure what the stress is, and you don't always need to identify that right away, but just becoming aware like, okay, I must be under stress in some capacity. Let's try to investigate and figure out where it's coming from.
So I'm just going to present the next questions. You don't need to start writing or anything yet. You can if you want, but it's going to be part of your homework through the week to notice how your body and your mind reacts to stress. And then next week, we're going to go through these questions one by one and give you real time to reflect. And hopefully just the awareness throughout the week will help you to answer these questions a little bit more clearly. Okay. So we're going to get into what are your go-to habits or coping mechanisms when you're stressed, even unconscious ones. So what can you notice about yourself? Like sometimes it's like overeating, scrolling, like all of a sudden you're addicted to your phone and you just can't put it down, or you just constantly find yourself on social media or whatever, or reading, like escaping, snapping at loved ones. I know I'm at my unhealthiest when even River is driving me crazy. She's pulling at the leash or something, and I just have no patience. I know I'm like, oh, River's an angel. It would never be her. It's me. Isolating or perfectionism. So notice your tendencies over this next week. And then do you notice any behavioral tendencies when you're stressed? So a coping mechanism, something that can act like a soother, like a baby and a soother. You and your phone is like a baby and a soother. Right? It's a coping mechanism. And then this relates the behavioral tendencies. This can be a coping mechanism, or it could be something that you just feel like, when something feels out of control, sometimes we can grasp onto something that can feel in control, like all of a sudden, like obsessing about lists or cleaning or the avoiding emails and laundry, micromanaging people, rushing around, running from thing to thing. So start to notice your tendencies. And you can bring this up to your partner too and see if they can help you to identify, and you guys can do this together if you want. Which of your relationships suffer the most when you're under stress? Why do you think that is? Right? So where do you feel like maybe someone's an outlet for you? Or if they're not an outlet, maybe you just don't pour into them as much when you're under stress. And the answer can also be yourself, your relationship with yourself, God, right? Feel into this. See where your relationships suffer when stress is present, especially for a longer period, but short term too. What kind of thoughts loop in your mind when you're stressed? So Veronique was mentioning some of those thoughts that come into her mind. She was saying, "Why me?" Notice those. What else? What else comes up? Where are those tendencies to come up in your mind? What is your stress story? What do you tell yourself when you're stressed that can keep you stuck in that stress loop? It could be based on past programming, something you learned maybe when you were growing up or in a job or whatever, that it's not safe to ask for help, right? I must continue to be productive because if I'm not productive, I'm lazy and I'm worthless, right? I have to do everything. If I want it done right, it's got to be me, right? What are these stories that you tell yourself that maybe have been true at one time, but maybe no longer are true, but you're still carrying them? When you look back, what are some early warning signs you could identify before the burnout or those big symptoms?
It's a lot of
It's not homework. It's just, I'm just planting a seed.
okay.
He said it's a lot of homework. I'm just planting a seed. We're going to go through this one by one next week. I'm just planting the seed for awareness this week. Okay, so some of the things that come up before those big symptoms. And then triggers that reliably cause stress for you. You can see reliably when you interact with that one person or when you maybe open your computer in the morning, like when that stress comes up. So just planting a seed. It's not homework. It's just planting a seed for this week for that awareness that isn't it interesting, mindset when something comes up. Oh, isn't it interesting? I'm just catching these little things so that next week when we do spend some time on these questions, you'll have a little bit more insight and awareness for them. Any questions? Okay. Well, it was really great to see you all. Looking forward to next week. We can continue the conversation and learn a little bit more about ourselves every day.
If you're still
Very
there,
helpful.
Veronique, I just want to ask you a question about trees after we log off, if you're there. If not,
Sure,
oh,
I'm
okay.
here taking
Thomas.
some sun before I go
Okay.
back to do work.
We want to be where you are. It's beautiful and sunny. We've got
I
rain.
know. Yeah, we're getting rain down over here.
Well, it's coming. It's like it's like pretty cloudy actually. Like when you look at this, but it's like thin clouds. But so I'm like, okay, I'm taking a little bit of sun.
Soak it up while you can.
Yes.
Thomas, like, when were you going to say something?
I was just saying this is really helpful because everything from the book that you were talking about and springtime and just getting back into the right groups and making sure we're staying focused on our goals. And this is all about, like, 'cause stress takes you off focus. Then you're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? So this is a really great self-analysis.
So basically, in summary, you guys are amazing.
Mm. Thank you. We think you guys are amazing too.
And I wanted to mention, I forgot I had a win. And
Yay.
it was the bitters helped my husband.
Yay!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Why? And there was a dinner we had on Sunday for an event, and he was like really feeling it really bad. He couldn't sleep. And then he took them and he was like, oh my gosh, it was like a miracle for him. So
Yay!
That's
Thanks for sharing. That's amazing. That's a big win. Okay, awesome. Great to see you guys. Keep up the amazing work on yourselves as always. We'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.